Oh, that kind of looks a bit weird.
Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to go from schizophrenia to success? Well, today is your lucky day. We've got an amazing show, and it's time to wake up the inner giant. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris. I'm your co-host today and co-creator of Wake Up with Giants TV, a tribe of giants and 12 journeys coaching. If you haven't gone to our website to take our giant quiz, go to giantsandsmalls.com. That is how we utilize our website. So we were talking about that just before the show. You go take our giant quiz. That's what it's there for. The giant freaking quiz, and you can see what we're up to all along the way. And I'm here with our host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls and the co-creator of those other amazing things and so much more. This dude is amazing. He's created so many amazing things over the years for the Giants, outside of the Giants, so much value for other people. He is the reason, like I said, that we are here, and I'm so grateful for him, Nicholas T. Smith.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, you make me sound good.
he is good. He's that good.
It's
Oh, look who showed up. Boom,
Hey,
schmaltzy.
Schmaltzy. We got an amazing show today. You ready to dive in? Should we introduce this guy?
I think we should. Normally I say, hey, should we introduce this guest? And then you
Well,
ask
yeah,
me. I still think it's a good idea.
let's do it, man. So today we have the pleasure of introducing Dominic, affectionately
Yes.
known as Dom. And he's a serial entrepreneur and certified high performance coach with a story that epitomizes resilience and transformation. And despite grappling with challenges like paranoid schizophrenia and agoraphobia, Dom has not only crafted his dream life, but also dedicated himself to empowering others to achieve their own extraordinary goals. So, with over 15 years of immersing himself in various coaching styles, Dom brings a wealth of knowledge and science-backed personal development techniques. His unique coaching approach melds proven methodologies with his own rich experiences, offering a transformative journey tailored to the individual needs of his clients. Dom's expertise has attracted a diverse and prestigious clientele ranging from UFC athletes and C-suite executives to Fortune 500 CEOs and Grammy award-winning artists, all benefiting from his exceptional guidance. What truly sets him apart is his focus on the essence of being, infusing lighthearted optimism into his teachings to help individuals unlock their true potential and attain significant personal growth. And as a keynote speaker, Dom's inspiring narrative of overcoming adversity and seizing success is not just motivational, but a testament to the power of resilience and determination. So join us today as we delve into his world and his insights on living a life that's not just big, but truly giant. Welcome to the show, Dom.
I feel like I'm so excited. Ryan's energy was like took me by surprise. Like I just woke up from a nap, right? And I was like, this is some real American stuff, you know. I'm so glad to be
Ryan brings the energy. I bring the mind stuff, and he's like, without him, this show wouldn't be what it is. So we're grateful for it.
perfect match. And I've never watched that intro before. I was like, oh, like I'm on TV, man. We here, like.
Not only that, you're live. You're going to get all the comments and everything.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
We're curious about your journey more than anything. What we try and demonstrate here for our viewers is, that anybody can become a giant in their life. It doesn't matter where you were born or what you were born with or without. It really comes down to who you decide to be and what you do with it. Right. So we want to start with your journey going back in time. We always start with the non-conscious, the things you thought you were, the views of, programming from childhood, maybe like you talked about mental health and mental health challenges. And so if you can take us back in time, tell us what you had to overcome to get to where you are today. Go back to where you thought you were something.
Oh, And I think even that question, I didn't think I was anything. I thought very little of myself. I think it was an interesting beginning for me. If I mean, what I feel, I'll just talk and you interrupt, and then Christian from there. How does that sound? Good.
It's perfect.
Sounds good. Yeah. We'll interrupt you a
Cool.
lot. We'll be in the
Good.
background here. People are like, where are
Okay,
these
good.
voices
So good.
coming from?
So fun. I say
Okay,
fun
right there.
fact,
Right. Wait. Okay, right. No, just kidding. I'm just
Go on.
you keep going.
All right, I'm gonna pretend that like my internet's a bit ropey and I can't hear you sometimes, just to continue talking.
This dude might interrupt us a few times too.
That's cool. So a lot of people don't actually know. I was supposed to be born deaf or blind. Now, I mean, some might argue I'm still slightly deaf and slightly blind, if I'm totally honest. But that's a true story, actually, and an actual fact. I'm colorblind, which is like I think 25% of men are actually color deficient to some degree. Yeah, I was born in the sack still, so it's quite a rare condition called the mermaid birth, and I came to learn that later on in life, which I thought was a fun fact. I'll start with that. So
you started life as a mermaid,
as a merman.
as a merman.
We should have started with that.
Yeah.
How to start life as a mermaid. That would have been an awesome introduction.
I think that everything else out the water, personally.
You should start your book with that. I was born a merman.
I was born a merman. You know what?
Yeah.
That may have just been created in this right now in this moment. I've never into the idea like that. But yeah, why I start there, I don't know. I'm just giving you a rough step. So I think what it does really is introduce you guys to how life kind of started and where I was at. I was born to, my mom was 16 when she had me, so she was a very young. She was a child herself. My dad was 17, and they came from a very, very, very rough neighborhood. We lived in one of the worst parts of town in London. So my parents were just subject to their environment, and they were drug addicts. So what happened was that's kind of how my life began. The environment I was born into, socioeconomically deprived, parents that were subject to the system. They not into personal development, and then kind of my what happened was, after a few years of kind of moving around, my mum and dad were homeless. So I remember my dad being arrested when I think I was about 4, and we was in a place, was occupying a flat. We call it squatting in the UK. I don't know for around the world what it's called if you're like occupying a house that's abandoned, basically. But we were squatting at the time, and my dad was arrested because he was obviously committing crime to facilitate my mother and father's drug habit. My mum said to me when I was older, like it was like quite a lot of money, like hundreds of pounds, which back in the 80s would have been, I'd say about $400 a day. This was a fair amount of drugs, and so my dad was arrested, and then my mother and I, my younger brother, was kind of in social housing. So it was like they had taken my mom, and we'd gone into social housing, and we kind of was in and out of social housing support. And then my mom was gifted government accommodation. I think when we was about 6, and that's when life began for me. So growing up in when I started becoming self-aware, from coming from that type of upbringing. And the craziest thing was, even as I tell the story now and connect with it, is that it always reminds me of how powerfully intuitive and sensitive children are. Because even from as old as 2 years old, I have memories. And when I talk to my mom, she's in disbelief. She's like, how do you remember that? Like, he was only 2. But I always felt this feeling of fear, of feeling just scared, not safe. And then that kind of just grew as my self-identity grew, and I started becoming aware of, children recognizing I might not have the right sneakers or trainers or this or that, and started to associate from there as like I'm poor, I'm and everything that comes with that. So like who I thought I was really began from as early as like 5, 6, 7, and then it kind of just grew from there, and not in a positive way, kind of like just trying to feel my
that gets wired in, right? So you think you are something, you grow up in a social situation, economic situation that's tough, right? And so you start to identify with that gets wired in, and so you live in this state of fear, right? And you feel fear about life, uncertainty about life. You don't know who you are within it. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, very accurate. Absolutely.
And then as you're developing this is creating your way of being in the world, right? So you think that's who you are in a way. It's like I'm this poor kid. I'm not, I'm maybe not valuable. I'm uncertain. I'm constantly in a state of fear. So you see the world that way, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I know I can relate with that. Is because I grew up in a similar, I was number 9 of 11 kids. Mom was single. Dad was dead at 2. When I was 2 anyway, not when he was. That would be weird. But like you grow up just knowing, we're a little different here, but we're probably not as different as we think. We're probably more common than we think, right? So how does that affect you? You start thinking that's who you are, and so you go through life being that, and what shows up for you from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Really, when the first time I ever realized, oh, maybe I'm not that. And one of the things when you were sharing that I was kind of feeling into or sensitive to was, as a child growing up in the era I grew up in, and there was a lot of like, drugs and there was murders, and it was pretty but that's all I knew of the world. I was unaware that there was something outside of the environment I was in, and I was just thinking and feeling into the power of the internet and how like shows like this and contribute to maybe actually reaching a child in that position, and just giving them such a broader idea that it's not just this small environment that you live in as a kid. But anyway, what was the question again, Nick? Sorry.
Well, just going back to that idea is, how did that affect you when you think you're that, and you're going into that space of development, and you're growing in that way? Yeah. It affects how you show up in the world, right? So you really start expressing that in the world. That's really all it is. If that's who you think you are on the inside, that's what shows up on the outside. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So what happened around that for you? Like as you grew up, coming out of that. And I love the idea of, somebody watching this, maybe somebody that's in it right now could be watching this and thinking, oh, I'm not the only one. Maybe there's a way for me to get past this. Right. So going back to the question is, how did that express? And then at what point did you wake up to that and say, I might be able to do something a little different? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So my dad was released from prison when I was around 8 years old, and maybe 9. And he had become a born again Christian in prison. So he had come out of prison and he was like this new man. Like even my mum didn't recognize him. It was really weird because as a child, I'm witnessing like my mum's a fiery woman. She's very fiery. She's almost always been the more male discipline in the house. My dad's was a lot more kind of meek and chill. Like he never disciplined my brother and I. It was my mum. But my dad came out as a Christian and he had this newfound faith, and he literally was a different man, to the point my mum told him she didn't want him in the house anymore, and she used to like emotionally abuse him, verbally abuse him, and he would just take it in humility, which was like, it's kind of strange to witness as a kid. Eventually, my dad carried on going to church. He found a church in the local area and he carried on going. And I think it was a long battle, but eventually, I guess my mum kind of thought maybe there's something in this, and she ended up going to church, and I ended up going to church. And the first time things started changing for me, and I thought maybe I am not what I was just what I could conceptualize with an 8-year-old mind from what the bishop was saying from the pulpit. And it was kind of like being introduced to this idea that somebody died for my sins. It was actually religion that kind of was the first place where I actually experienced, and I am called to be something bigger in this world. And these new ideas and concepts, I was kind of like came into my existence and gave me, I guess, a new way of seeing things and hope, to be honest.
Yeah, I like that. You don't even know it's available. When we look at the book, The Giants and the Smalls, and in the book, Rit lives a small life. He lives an entire life as a small, doesn't know any different, doesn't know there's possibility, even though the giants are always there above him, right? And then that burst of distant laughter has him look up and see the giants for the first time. And he's like, I wonder if there's more. I wonder if that's possible for me. How did they get so big? And why are we living in this world where all of us are like this? And how did they get the way they are? And I'm like this. And he started to ask questions. And those questions opened up the possibility of expanding his life, right? And in your case, it was religion that opened that up for you. It's like you had lived out a lifetime at that point, right, of being a certain way, and then you get introduced to this new way of seeing the world, and you start thinking or questioning what's possible for me. Could I do that? Does that sound accurate? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
No, absolutely. I think for me, because I was so young, it wasn't as kind of like maybe I could do that type thing. What it was for me was more of a feeling inside, like this deep feeling of like warmth or love, or like, wow, like I'm not trash. But I was still a kid, So it was really more waking up to this idea and feeling the impact of that. But then there was a bunch of years that followed that where that was just an idea in my head that was never shared. And I was still a young kid full of anxiety, stress, and fear that didn't have the ability nor feel comfortable enough to share what was truly going on with me.
I think that's vital right there, right? You can have an awakening and then spend a long period like growing into that awakening. Mm-hmm. So when Steve Hardison put me on his shoulder in that parking lot back in 2009, that was an awakening moment. Like I saw the potential and the possibility, and the book came from that. But I'm going on 15 years of learning the lessons that I awakened to, right? Mm-hmm. So 2009 to now, it's been just a journey of growth and development, setbacks, disappointments, frustrations, difficulties. It's like, holy crap, man. You would think once you awaken, life would get easy, right? and here you have this awakening moment. And I love that you're sharing this idea that being awakened doesn't mean you don't have to do your work, right? Like you still had to grow into it.
It's not like sunshine and roses. You kind of wake up to the way you've been being at that point in time. That's like, it's almost the daunting moment too, of like, oh, like that's how I've been. And then, oh, how do I fix it? Or what do I do from here? Right. Like it is such a, I don't know. I remember that moment for me too. And then clinging for anybody that I knew that could help me through this like transition phase, this moment. So I don't know if anything that like resonates for you too, Dom, but I would imagine there's a lot of people like that kind of wake up to how they were being, and then they just don't know what they don't know at that point too.
No, absolutely. I think it's so true. I think both your points are just very accurate as it relates to, this awakening oftentimes is it will come, but it's what's done with it, or there's still work to be done. It's not like and you can feel the enormity of that work, as in that moment, depending on where you're at and kind of how you feel. For me, I was still a kid at that moment in time, so I didn't know anything about the world, so it was kind of just like, but I knew at that moment is that I was destined for greatness. I knew at that moment that actually maybe, just maybe, I'm not worthless. I'm not, you know, trash, basically.
Beautiful. I mean, that right there is once you have that realization, that never lets go.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't mean you don't have struggles.
Oh,
right?
no.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the struggles you had to overcome. Is it in the title? It says you had schizophrenia. Is that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll speak to that. So if we fast forward a few years now, you know, the area I grew up in, and it really speaks to like the inability for me to express myself or articulate certain things. And I remember I was a big kid. I'm 6'2" and 6'3", and by the time I was like 11, I was pretty tall. So I always stood out, and I always felt like a giant. You know, so my number one priority was to make myself small. So I didn't have any attention on me. You know, especially in the areas that I grew up in. You don't want to stand out. You want to kind of blend in into the background. And anyway, like fast forward, I'm coming out of primary school. I was bullied for most of my primary school years, and I used to have nightmares. I used to suffer with nightmares, like spiritually attacked in like just nightmares, like sleep paralysis as a kid. I wet the bed until I was about 12 years old.
We both relate to that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. So I was just petrified. And anyway, when what happened was, I defended myself one day. Like I remember having these dreams of like just having a fight with this bully. And one day, the day came, and I was still in primary or elementary. I don't know what you guys call it. And so I was about 10 years old, and this guy was 11, and he was going on to big school now. And I remember I snapped one day in the playground and ended up like just having this child's fight. But I ended up coming out on top, apparently. So I had won, and so everybody started giving me a reputation for like being this guy. But then what happens in a neighborhood like mine is, I had kids from other schools that were the best fighters, or you know, in their school, coming to look for me and want to fight me, and I'm just this scared little kid inside, thinking like, oh my god, what is going on here? And so what happened was that kind of followed me into secondary school. So I'm out of elementary, I'm out of primary school, I'm in secondary school now, and I was just carrying this deep fear, this anxiety, you know. So even going to school, I used to hate it, I dreaded it, and there was this group of boys that used to come up to me every day. I want to fight you. I've heard you're a fighter. Come on, let's fight. And I just would be petrified. I'd literally be petrified. And I had a poker face. I never showed it. And I don't know what, but I remember I ended up lying to my mum to say, Mum, I can't go to that school anymore. And I don't remember the lie I told her, but I know she said, well, what do you want to do then? And I said, I want to go to another school, which was in Peckham Manor, where my cousin went, because I just wanted to feel less scared. And maybe if I had a family member in the school, I would feel closer, because I felt alone, you know, I felt just separated from everyone else. And so I ended up going to that school, and where my cousin went, and that's Peckham Manor. More of the same, really. You know, now I can process it. You know, I had penis anxiety growing up. I was scared of the locker room. I had body image issues. This is a boy. He's supposed to be a man. Like I didn't even know the extent of it until I got into relationships when I was older. But all of this stuff I was battling as a kid, but obviously I couldn't articulate that to no one. So, yeah, I had moved school to school. Do you want to explore something before I go in?
I kind of do, yeah. Like the idea here is that we may age, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not develop. And so it's like we get older in body, but not in mind and emotion. And so here you are, people look at you and they're like, that's a man. That dude's adult. He's grown up. We could have a conversation about things. But you weren't, right? Like, and there are a lot of people that are like that. Like they're grown up physically, but they're still as immature as they were when they were 10 years old. That same framework that they developed when they were 10 is still running the show, or 7, right?
Absolutely.
And so just to hit on that, you know, it's these fears. Like I can relate so much to the fear. Like, holy crap. You know, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety back in 2017, and And it's not as impactful, but it is. It's still present. It's I've just learned to manage it and work with it, you know. But the poker face is nobody would know on the outside.
No.
Right.
Nope.
And so we learn to fit into our society, even though inside there's a turmoil, there's all this stress going on. So, you know, if you continue from there, like, and we don't have to go a full timeline here on your story, but just hit the major points of, you know, how do you navigate that when you've got like what you just shared, all this stuff going on in you, your body's grown up, but you haven't yet.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of walk us through what happens next.
I mean, you don't navigate it, right? You just kind of carry on until something happens. And so for me, if I was to lead up to the paranoid schizophrenia, I had ended up going in and out of many schools, and I ended up going to my last school. And what had happened was, you know, I was kept to myself, and I was doing all of the GCSEs, which are like I'm going to take my exams to leave school and go into college. But I had been on my third school now, and I'd settled in, and you know, things were still really hard for me, but I was just trucking on, and I was making a way. And I'd been nominated to do some of the lessons, the studies like geography, science, maths, a year early. So I was super stoked. I was like, oh, might be able to do it a year early, get good grades. Just as I was about to do that, so I'm a year out of going to like college, somebody had approached me in the playground, a gang member, a very well-known gang member, and said, what have I got for him? Have I got any money for him? I said, no, I've got no money. And he kind of grabbed me and pushed me against the wall. Now I was mindful at that time that I can't physically fight this guy. I don't like fighting anyway. I wasn't a fighter. So I grabbed him and just kind of thought, let me get him off me. But in our pushing and shoving, he fell on the floor. He must have been so embarrassed about that. He said, wait until after school. You're dead, you know. And at that time, it sounds kind of comical now because you're like, oh, by this time we're 15 years old. I mean, but in my neighborhood, if somebody says that, especially a guy like that, who you know, that is a real thing. So like, I'm like, oh boy, what have I done? Anyway, long story short, what happened was the end of school came. Apparently there was a guy with a gun outside of the school, and we're talking about the UK, guys. Like getting a gun in the it's not America. I mean, this is a different type of thing. So
yeah, we have them just laying around on street corners and you know everywhere.
Yeah, I got them. It's like toothpicks on the dinner table and stuff.
Nick's muted you.
It's up by the silverware in the spice cabinet, right? We got them everywhere, right? The underwear drawer.
It's like, you know, we
tripping on them everywhere.
We use fly spray. You guys pick up an Uzi, you know, it's like get rid of that.
Fly spray.
But, yeah, so anyway.
I actually do have like 43 of them actually, so that's funny. I'm not helping the stereotype, am I?
And lovely things, don't get me wrong. When I go to America, I always go gun range. I love the art of it. But without digressing, right? So this was kind of a thing. So the armed police came, and then I rang my mom and dad. They came, and the school took us to the highest point in the building and said, "You can't." The armed police said, "Well, there's nothing we can do. For my own safety, I need to stay until the crowd dissipates and then go." That was the last day I ever went to the school. So I left school with no qualifications. Still quite fearful of my environment, feeling lost, feeling hopeless. And I went straight to work with my dad. When my dad was in prison, he learned carpentry. And so when he came out, that's what he done. And I always wanted to kind of be around him. So I went straight into work with my dad. I'll fast forward to the schizophrenia bit. What happened was after a few years with my dad, because of my desire to be the best at what I do, the work that we was doing, I felt that we weren't aligned because I wanted to do a proper job and he just wanted to make the money. And then I realized, no, I'm not here for this anymore. And I started asking for more money, and I'm a grafter. I actually pride myself on it. I'm a really hard worker. I'm a dog. You know, I'm never more alive than if I'm working and toiling and sweating. I just feel alive when I'm in manual labor. So I worked really hard. And me and my dad ended up stopped working together, and then that's when the beginning of the end for the beginning really started for me.
Yeah. Wow. So there's a whole new life that shows up right here. Right.
Yeah.
And, I mean, growing up with all that fear, all that, no way to process it either. Like there was no way to express it, to share it, to work through it. Nothing. It was just like this fear showed up and you're all in it. And there's nowhere for it to go. So it just stews inside of there. Do you think that was that a contribution to what followed next?
I wouldn't say so. That's the funny
Okay.
thing. You wouldn't know. So I obviously in my area, there's a lot of crime. And so most of the guys that have the nice things are carrying, they're doing illegal activities. I'm mainly selling drugs generally, or, involved in fraud. And, I'd stopped working with my dad. I was kind of hanging on the block sort of thing. And one of the guys approached me and he's like, hey, I need to get somewhere. And I was like, okay, where? And then he told me this place about 100 miles away. And I was like, what's the catch? But I kind of knew what he was into. So he said, I'm going to give you £75. Now, at that time, I was working my nuts off for £30 a day. He said, I'm going to give you £75 for like 2 hours of driving. I was like, damn. So anyway, I made a phone call to my attorney and I said, I'm going to run a few things by you. If I happen to be driving and somebody happens to have something about their body, what's the scenario? He gave me the scenario. I said,
hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically speaking, right?
I might know a guy that knows a guy that knows a cousin.
Yeah, it's just hearsay,
right? Yeah.
Just hearsay. And so anyway, this individual decided to go on a little drive, and what happened was after a few years, that little drive turned into actually being involved in a lot of stuff. And basically I just fell into this hole of like crime, and I was making more money than I've ever made. And it's funny because I was about 18, 19 and I was making £1,000 a day. And I was like, that's when I realized, way before I'd had a breakdown, which we'll get to, and had this like awakening. It was prior to that I was like, that I realized even from there, because I still had this like grounding in like God and morality through religion. And so even when I was doing certain things, my heart never felt right. But I was making money and I was poor. And I was like, I realized, damn, money. I knew early on money was never going to bring me happiness, because I had more.
Kids, before you go and do what he did, listen to the rest of this interview, because I'm sure it shifted. Don't do drugs, kids. Or
Don't
crime.
do drugs. Don't do drugs. Or crime.
Don't look in the spice cabinet.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So so I was making all this money, and anyway, but during this time now, I'm smoking copious amounts of dope. I had kilograms of dope around me. I was smoking copious amounts of dope. I was drinking heavily. All on the outside whilst I'm having fun, but inside, that same turmoil that was present from the kid is still there. It's just like searching for a relief, searching for some form of, I don't know, peace about oneself. And that all came to an end. I was arrested 2000, I don't even know, 1, I don't remember the specific dates. And then a long trial began. So I was on trial for 28 months, and they charged me with intent to supply Class A. Then they changed it mid-case. My attorney told me they've changed it because it's easier to prove, and they want to put you away, to conspiracy to supply. And I was looking at 15 years in jail. Now I've been on this run. I've been trying to kind of wrestle with my conscience, and is God real? Is there a bigger thing out there? And this thing's happened. And what I've done, I've stopped smoking copious amounts of alcohol. I mean, smoking copious amounts of marijuana.
That might have been the issue right there, right?
I think it was. I've actually smoked alcohol before.
Right.
You're drinking the marijuana and smoking the alcohol.
Right.
Changed it up. It's both possible, but either way.
It's true. It is possible.
It it is. That's the scary thing. So anyway, I had this. I'm going through this court case now. So I decided that's it. I'm done with this life. Like I'm done. I'm gonna get back on my knees. I'm gonna pray. I want to become reacquainted with the Holy Father. And I quit cold turkey overnight. Boom, stopped everything.
Wow.
Well, that was the beginning of the end before the beginning again. That's when it really, that's when the mental health kicked in, and I went through I can't even put into words. It was it was heavy. You know.
Yeah, that's you know, to have mental challenges, period. You know, because we're going to go through struggles. People are going to have anxiety. They're going to have depression. They're going to have grief. You know, they're going to go through these heavier emotions. Period. That's part of being human.
Yeah.
But then you add to that, you know, mental illness, right? Schizophrenia, or some borderline, or anything else, and it enhances it. So they're not just working with a normal set of characteristics. Now it's above and beyond, and now they've got to battle that plus work on the stuff that most of us go through. And so this is impactful because, and I hope we have enough time to cover all this today, because you are at this point dealing with not just mental health, but mental illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And schizophrenia is, you know, to me, one of the biggest, you know, it's that is one of the biggest challenges. So, I mean, without going into all the details of the schizophrenia, more in line with what did you do and how did you navigate this, right? Because I think that'll be the most useful to the viewers. Sure. And I'd love to have mixed in some of your story in that, but how did you navigate this to get to where you are today? Because that's a big challenge.
You know, I've been asked this by mothers of children that are going through the same thing, or teenagers, and the truth is I don't have an answer. All I can share with you guys is my experience, and I didn't navigate it for 2 years. It navigated me, right? And then eventually there was a break in the storm. You know, after the suicide contemplations and the depression, it was so exhausting to be gone with the fairies. And it's so weird because, you know, when I was with my loved ones and my family, they would look at me and I would see the fear and trepidation on their face. It was like they were looking at a stranger. And then I would go and look in the mirror, and you guys know when you've seen a real crazy person, their eyes are different. They're not there. It's like they say somebody's there, and like Nick, right? They're not there though. Like they're not there. And that's where I was. So to look in the mirror and be filled with that and go, oh shit. And it was weird. I was trapped. My soul was trapped inside my body, and it got worse and worse. Can
we hit on this a little bit? I want to hang here for a minute. That's hell. You literally, that's hell, and you're alive. Like that's hell. And you've got no escape from it, and all this stuff is going on in your head, and you're not there, and you can't be there, and your family sees you're not there, and like to me, that just is an embodiment of what hell would be like, right? And you're living it.
Literally, I can sometimes I even, you know, generally I sometimes I can't believe that I made it through that. You know, if it wasn't through my mom, the thought of my mom having to deal with my death was the only thing that kept me fighting. There wasn't a single, that's the only thought that kept me alive, was seeing my mom's chin, because she used to break down all the time because, you know, I used to just do some crazy shit. And you're in such hell that's why crazy people are so strong. Because I used to judge, like, even as a teenager, like, why are some of my friends, why are they self-harming? That's so ridiculous and weak. And I remember it was such hell that I could punch walls until my knuckles were broken and bleeding, but I was chasing that physical pain because I'm so detached now. It's like I'm trying
to feel something, right?
I'm trying. I'm like, am I even alive anymore? And the roller coaster, it's like it was hell. I can't. The closest thing I could describe it is like taking your nervous system and putting it in a blender and just leaving it on all day long, and you cannot escape that. Like, it's just not possible. And I felt that, so I'd become exhausted. I would get insomnia. I couldn't sleep, but I was so tired. My eyes would be dry. And then I'd just see things. I can't describe it. It was literally, you can't put it into words unless somebody who's watching has been through it or tasted something similar. It's hard to describe, honestly.
So I'm curious around this is what pulled you out of that? Like that seems hopeless. Like there's despair, there's no way out. The only way you think you can get out of it is, you know, you have thoughts of suicide. You can't even act on that because, and man, if anybody's battling this, please don't act on that. Like, you know, there are helplines for that. And there are people that really care, you know, don't do that. That's not what we're talking about here. But you're at this point that seems like the option. That seems like this is my only way out of this, but I don't even want to do that. Right. Because of the impact of that.
Yeah.
Probably
So
kind
I'm
of
curious
judgment too, right? That it's in there. You're judging the crap out of like your life and yourself in that shame, guilt,
everything,
all of that
right?
stuff running. Yeah.
So you're stuck in this blender
Mm-hmm.
and there's no way out, but here we are. Like,
Yeah.
obviously that's not what happened. Right.
No.
Right.
Yeah. So like what happened? Like what happened in your world that shifted?
I mean, I want to be mindful here. You know, I don't want to peddle religion.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
You speak
you're
your
good.
truth. Yep.
Yeah. So for me at that moment in time, the only thing I had was God, or my idea of God, or the religion my dad had introduced me to. So that was that Jesus Christ was, you know, my savior. And so I remember I was super obsessive. I still am quite obsessive. It's just part of my personality. Everything I do, I really just do. And so I did praying, and I did reading the Bible, because I thought I could just somehow buy my sins back, to the point, buy my mind back. I thought, you know, I'm just gonna pray, I'm just gonna fast, I'm gonna read the Bible, even though I didn't understand the bloody thing. I'm just gonna read it anyway, and that's what I did. Like literally, that's what I did. That's what I did. And my dad would take me, and he'd bring other pastors, because one of the worst things is that even at that time you feel so judged. So like they were like making me drink this oil and trying to cast demons out of me, and I knew I wasn't demon possessed. Like I was like, are these guys? I know I was crazy, but I'm thinking, are these guys crazy? I haven't got a demon in me. And they're like doing all this stuff, and that was super scary as well at that time, you know.
Why are all the fingers pointing this way? I don't get this. Right?
Here's the cool thing too, Dom, is that our viewers, and so if you don't know this about our viewers, and now you're one of them, if you came in for the first time, they can take it, and you're talking about religion and what works for you. God works for you, right? They can take it, they can see it, and then they can also see what works for them and equate it in their lives. So you're free. Please don't hold back on what worked for you, because some people might have not worked for them, or they don't know that could work for them, and we want that whatever it is to work for them to work for them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And
well,
so that was
I want to hit on that too, like the idea that no, I don't have demons in me, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got to clear that up.
The picture you're painting, though, is that, and variations of this at scale. You know, all of us have a version of that. Is, you know, and like you says, we might say there are demons, but it's not that. It's that we are in a hell, so to speak. We are stuck in our thoughts, our emotions, and all this stuff that's going on. And people like, oh, you must be possessed if that's going on. And it's like, no, that's just what's going on. Like, you guys are crazy to even think that's going on. Like, I have that in me. Right.
Yeah.
And so like, I love what you're sharing here around the idea. You grab scripture, you grab something, you're grasping for something to not only keep you here, but to pull you out of that hell, right? That blender.
Yeah.
And keep going. So what happened there? So you start reading, you just start getting your hands on stuff. You start praying, right?
Yeah, I would pray for like hours until I fell asleep with like carpet burns in my head. Like I was just doing whatever what came to me. And that was, and after some time, you know, my family was there to support me. that was even hard, because even in them supporting me, like it was hurting. It was so emotional. I remember one time I kicked off with my dad, and my uncle come and got me, and then he put me in the living room, drove me to his house, put me in the living room, and then I had my cousins upstairs, you know, and they were girls and they were in their room, and then I remember hearing them go and whisper them, usher them out the room. You've got to stay in our room tonight. And I just sat on the couch with tears streaming down my eyes, like, man, this is. I felt like a monster, you know, and I would just sit there and cry and just feel like I'm not. That's not who I am. I'm not a monster. I'm not a monster. And I was trapped inside. So it's like I was looking for my family to reassure me. It's almost like I needed somebody to look in my eyes and say, they see me. I see you, Dom. But nobody had the courage, or nobody had the foresight. Nobody could see that I was trapped in there. And it was almost like that was what I needed to help pull me out. Like somebody had to have faith that I would come out. And it was the craziest experience ever. I think the closest I could get was my brother. And my mum reminded me years later that I'd always ask for my brother in my worst times, my younger brother. Like I'd always say, I want my brother, I want my brother, I want my brother. Because I believe it's because he's the only eyes that I had the most hope in, you know? And yeah, so I just carried on. My family would support. And eventually, it just started to get a little better. I mean, every day, I just knew it was going to be a fight. I knew I was in a battle. I knew I was going to war. And I would always bet on myself, you know?
You just wanted somebody to see your value.
Yeah.
Somebody, right? And your brother was that person that could see it. And it's hard, you know, in that situation. I'm sure there was impact everywhere, you know, for people in their own way. They were experiencing it however they were. But you were you, and you wanted somebody that could hold the space for you to be that, but also still love you, right?
Yeah.
And so in a way, is it love that brought you out of that, or what would you say? Like,
you know what
started to shift it?
I think the point to make was that it wasn't so much believing, or it was that I needed confirmation that I had a hope to come back. So it's like I needed somebody to remind me that, Dom, you're still in there, because there was no clue, there was no proof. That's what I was more seeking at that moment in time. But that's kind of an impossible task to ask somebody. It's like,
well, yeah, not their job to do it, but
no.
But much needed, right? Like,
yeah.
You if you could have somebody just see Dom is in there, then you could start to see that too. And if you could start to see that, then that gives you hope. You know, hope theory is a big thing. When hope theory says when you get clear on your value or your dream or vision, then it creates hope. And when you have hope, you know your future is going to be brighter. You know you're the one that's going to do it, and you'll overcome any obstacle to make it a reality. I mean, would you say that aligns with what happened for you? Is that you saw some hope?
Yeah. Well,
don't let me put words in your mouth. Like, if that's not it, like change it up, you know?
No. I would say that, you know what, there was an element of faith, and all I did was, there was one scripture at the time, and my philosophy is deep now, man. But I didn't understand the meaning. And here's the deal. I forgot what line it was, but it was something about even a donkey or an ass knows its master. And because I was so lost, I connected with the fact that even a dog, when it gets used to a home, it will find its way back. It's got that level of intelligence. And I put my trust in this one line, right? And I thought, I know I'm lost, but I'm just going to trust my soul is going to find its way back. And then that's exactly what I did. And that is the God's honest truth. There was nothing else. I had family around me. And then as the years went on, I just kept fighting, and it kept getting a little bit easier. I kept being able to, I had to collaborate back to society, because I would be like laughing, almost like the Joker from Batman. Like I'd just be in this deep hysterical laughter. Emotions would just come and take me. And then the next minute I could be bawling my eyes out in deep trauma. It was just
holy cow. Yeah. And your philosophies are deep. You know, I got to sit with you in conversation on the TUB interview that we did, the masterclass that you just did. And if you're watching this, you'll want to go over and watch that. It's powerful. And it gives you a sense of the philosophy, like to go from where you came from, like from the very beginning, going through your childhood and development, and then going through a life of crime, and then going through a life of schizophrenia, almost your personal hell. Like it was almost like this purging moment in your life, that hell, right? It almost prepared you, even though it doesn't seem like that's what was happening, for who you are today. Because without any of that, Dom wouldn't be who he is today, right? And in your world, you'd be like, man, I could have gone without most of that. Right? Wasn't there an easier way?
All of us are feeling that right now. Everyone that's watching is like, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's necessary, right? Like going through that stuff, you learn some things, you grow, you shift.
I wouldn't change it. I got goosebumps right now. I wouldn't change it for a thing. Like that made me who I am today. That gave me the heart of service, the heart of love, the desire to want to help others, the hunger to read again and get involved in learning how does the mind work, why do people do what they do. Without that, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So I wouldn't change it for a thing,
Otherwise, you'd still be drinking marijuana and smoking alcohol.
Yeah,
100%. Exactly.
And making $1,000 a day, right? Like the absolute power of that, though, to have gone to the depths that you've gone through, means that you can connect with people at every level that your clients are experiencing. No matter what they're going through, you're like, oh, that's easy. I did that like twice on Monday, right? That was easy.
Yeah.
But it gives you
hold my beer.
Hold my beer. Yeah. It's an empathy, though, and a compassion for their space. And likely for many people who haven't gone through that, they wouldn't be able to have that level of empathy and compassion for their clients, because I've had people say, I flat out don't get it. I've never had anything like that in my life. I can't relate. Whereas you can relate at every level, right?
Yeah. I think something that comes up for me, though, is, that story sounds all amazing and I wouldn't say amazing, but that's a guy that's been to hell and back. But, I'm very mindful not to discount that some people have not had a life like that. But, them having a conversation with their boss because they want to raise is as close as they'll ever get to those feelings. I can't gauge the depth of courage it takes for someone else.
That could still be their Everest, right? Like that's something that could be like super heavy for them, like approaching their boss for a raise.
Exactly that. And where it could be having a conversation with your wife about something you're just trying to avoid. It's like, that's the same thing. And so if you can take anything from that, it's you can do it. Don't dismiss it because it might not sound as deep. Like that's your Everest, like Ryan said. And it's like, and I encourage you and everybody, like, trust me, you can do it. You can do it. That's the only thing I can say is like, sometimes searching for the answers on how to will just delay you from taking the action. That's seriously going to change.
I just think, that when we get into the space of comparing our challenges, it's not a good time to have penis envy. Right.
Yeah.
It's like seriously, it's like our challenges are our respective challenges, and they're as difficult as we think they are. And we're all looking for a way out. Right. Yeah. And a way to summit the Everest, so to speak. And what I hear in your story, yeah, Dom, you could come along and say, yeah.
Alina came late to that conversation about the penis envy. You have to rewatch it.
Earlier in the show, you'll see that. But man, your Everest, as I look at it, with my penis envy over here, my problems are small comparing, you've overcome what would seem insurmountable, right? And what it does, though, is that if that can be overcome, my challenges can be overcome. And the person watching this show, their challenges can be overcome. And that's what we try and instill in this show. It's like, look, we are human beings. We all came here to learn something, and it's challenging. And there are times that it feels like there's no hope and it's not going to change, right? And if you just hang in there, all things pass. Life will turn around. We don't know when or how or what, right? But you're becoming who you're capable of becoming by going through the purging, by going through the, I don't know, would you call it the refiner's fire, so to speak? Like you are being prepared for something great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that could be really hard to trust when you're in it, because it feels like there's no hope here, right?
I mean, yeah. And yeah, it is hard to trust. It is hard to trust. And, you know, as encouraging as it is, like my wife and I were going through a certain situation where my eldest son, who's 16, has gone to live with his nan because he wants more freedom, right? And it's really emotionally challenged for my wife, you know. It hurts my heart a bit. I deal with it a little better, but for my wife, it's definitely heavy on her heart and her soul. And she's a mum. She's got that mother's love.
Yeah.
And just yesterday, no, sorry, Friday, and she was really emotional. She was crying. And sometimes, you know, when people are in that situation, I said to her, you know what, honey, I know there's nothing I can do to alleviate the pain, but I just want you to know if there's anything I can do, I'm here, you know, and it will be okay. Time is a great healer. But don't try to avoid the pain, you know, don't try and push it away. And sometimes part of you, I don't say earning's the right word, but earning that liberation and the ability, or the badge, like a badge of honor to be a hope for others, is that you have to be with that pain. That you can't buy that. You can't buy overcoming that. Money ain't gonna help. It's something you have to earn. And sometimes you just gotta just be okay with that. Be okay being not okay, and don't judge yourself for it. I think we always want to be fixed, want to fix ourselves, and it's like sometimes you just gotta be with the pain. Just allow it to be.
Yeah, I think, you know, I keep hearing the word peace is what we're really after, all of us, is peace, right? Like if we really narrow it down, we'll pay for peace, we'll work for peace, we'll, you know, do all these things to just try and get some semblance of that in our life. And you know, when we go through these stressors, that's when you realize you stopped breathing, so to speak. It's like you stopped noticing the peace that was in your life, and these challenges, they kind of gentle and sometimes not so gentle nudges to remember that the goal is peace. And so you want to get back there as quick as you can, right? And so, but sometimes we lose hope that that's possible. Like we lose hope that we can even have that, right? That can even come back into our life again. And here you go through your hell, and your wife's going through her version of hell right there, you know, and the goal is to get back to that peace that you had, right? That love, you know. It's like you love your kid, you love your son, she loves your son. You want to give them that freedom. You hope they'll come back around and want to be around you. And sometimes if you push too hard, you just push them away. Exactly. So it's like you got to give them that room and freedom to go through their own personal journey and just trust. It's like the trust is so vital here. Is, man, if I'm struggling, I have a hard time trusting, you know. And I think, you
I
know,
had a thought about that real quick.
Yeah, go
Like
ahead.
there's
Please.
this almost this false sense of security. You might not recognize it, of staying where you are or where you're at. The fear of the unknown is almost one of those things that's even more paralyzing than anything. If you remember the show Frozen, I think it was Frozen 2, where she's like into the unknown, you know, and she's like singing that song into the unknown. And she, like, if we all had that excitement of going into the unknown, the problem is that you can't see that. You can see where you're at, even if it is hell. Sometimes you just don't step until you're pushed, or you're awoken. You wake up to
Awaken,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, to your
Wake up with
potential.
giants.
Yeah, things get so bad that you'll try anything just to feel that peace again. But peace, remember, is a construct. Happiness, fear. I learned this from Steve Hardison. It's what's up here. You could be in hell and be peaceful, of sorts, and
Right.
stagnant and stuck, or you can create that in your mind of how you want to be and feel that at any point in time. That's the best part about being human, is you get to choose at any point in time what you want, and then you can go do it.
Ryan, can you speak real quick, just briefly, to the you're only as close to your reality or other people as your thoughts?
That's exactly it. Is this
Yep.
Steve Hartman was talking about love as a construct, and that my relationship to Dom, my view of Dom is from seeing him in the Ultimate Coach Facebook group and some other places, as well as followed his journey. That's as close as me and him are right now, right? And he didn't follow me, but I came in and was happy with the interview, and so that's his view of me and what he's experienced in the last hour. But that can change, that can shift. We could say, hey, you know what? Well, Ryan's this, Ryan's that. You could have your judgments, all the things. If you're going through a relationship issue, you could be like, well, they're this and they do that. Or you could shift that and start speaking how you want them to be, or how you want your life to be, and how you see them, and that everything, your whole reality will shift.
Same with your world, right? Just however you
Correct.
speak your world, you can start to project that into the world, and that becomes a creation of who you're being, right? Man, this show, it's powerful. Like I didn't expect it to kind of go down that road. You know, you hear of schizophrenia. We have a construct of what that means, you know, and nobody really knows what that's like unless they've gone through it. I can only imagine what that's like. That's the only thing I can do with it, right? Whereas for you, no, you've got direct knowledge of it. You've been through it. It's beyond belief even. It's like, no, I know what that's like. But to be able to demonstrate here is you always had a choice in what happened next. You never stopped clawing at, scooting along, shuffling along, climbing along. As you could take bigger strides, you took bigger strides. We say in our journeys, giants still take small steps. They're just bigger, right? And you took whatever small step you could take, even if that was just to pull yourself out of bed one more time, right?
Yeah.
How important is that? And what thought did you have right there?
So important. I remember, you know, the journey out of the deep mental illness. You know, for me, being deeply depressed and suffering with panic attacks and anxiety, that was progress. I was like, woo, this is cool. But at the same time, you know, I'm not playing it down. It was still dark. So those small steps you're talking about, you know, I remember being so depressed in my healing journey that I wouldn't wash or bath for like 5 days. I would just stay in bed. And, you know, just getting up and brushing my teeth. Do you know the neurons and the feel, like how good I would feel, so accomplished that I got up and brushed my teeth.
If it's to do with the brain and the neurons.
Yeah. You know, like, you know, and I didn't have the knowledge to access like the psychology of it or anything like that at that moment in time. But I knew, do you know what? That was my Everest. Just that day. And climbing Everest, you know, brushing my teeth, and I'd go to bed and it would make me feel just a little bit better. I mean, I was still depressed. I was still struggling, but I felt a little better about myself because I managed to brush my teeth today.
Yeah, this is so powerful, so powerful. Like if you can hear this, you that are watching, that, and when I was going through my struggles, something similar, not quite the degree here. I would make my bed first thing in the morning. I just make my bed. It became a routine and a ritual for me, is to just make my bed. I got one thing done today. And then, you know, to keep myself groomed and clean, it was another thing. I could brush my teeth, put on some deodorant, take a shower, right? I could control that. And that was enough for me to step out of some funk, right? I can only do what I can do. And what I can control is who I'm being and the actions that I can take. I don't have a say in the outcome. I'd like to. I don't have a say in the timing. I'd like to. All I can do is act on what I can act on and control who I'm being, right? Who's showing up to do my life, right? What does that bring up for you?
It's just true, you know. It's just the truth. I think Yeah.
I love getting to the end when you feel complete. Like it
Yeah.
it
You
hits and
can
we know
tell,
like
huh?
that came through. Like your message today impacted a whole bunch of people, Dom. And it's going to continue because I know who you are and how powerful you are and how you've stepped into that. And you can take your life and take that and spread it out to everyone that you know. And we get to do the same thing. We get to take a part of your life and then also take that as a ripple effect and continue to share your journey with other people. They'll be impacted for years and years and years because of this moment in time right now, because of what you've shared. My life is different. Nick's life is different because we're better for hearing what you've gone through, and we can take that and share and relate more with other people as we share the Giants message with other people. So thank you so much for being on our show today, brother.
My pleasure.
Man, I love, just to highlight you, Dom, you'll be speaking at the TUB event in May of 2024 in Birmingham. And that's going to be powerful. I mean, this is just a glimpse of the power you'll have on stage there. And I got to interview you for the TUB masterclass. And so, I mean, to pair this with that, it'll change the whole dynamic of that interview. Like, if I had known you going into that, the way I know you right now, it would have been a different interview. And so, I got to experience the other side of this in that interview where I got to hear your philosophies and your deep thinking and how you're being with one concept, one construct, right? And that's just one of many facets of your life. And hearing your backstory of what led you to start creating your philosophies and explore the mind and how it works, it's like I got to experience one facet of it. Yeah. And had I known what I know now, listening to that, dude, I would have dived deeper with you around this. Like, so we're gonna have to do a do-over. Like, you're an incredible human, man. I am just so blown away by you. Like, thank you for showing up and sharing so vulnerably your journey today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Honestly, I just feel privileged and honored to be part of the show, invited on the show. This is kind of how I live my life a lot. This was created when we did the after
like about 4 days ago. Yeah.
I was like, check my calendar. I rang my wife. Is there anything planned? No. All right, let's do it. And before the call, I said, and I love to come to. Even meeting Ryan, this has been like fantastic. It is Ryan because I'm second guessing. Wait, his name is Ryan, right?
Yeah.
I've called him that a few times, so I hope so. And anyway, I love just experiencing anew. It reminds me of like that. It just makes me feel excited. And to be with, when I first met Ryan, I was like, oh, 2 for the price of 1. I didn't know we was getting, because I haven't been familiar with the show. To be part of it, coming in blind. And actually, there's one aspect that's been really cool and exciting for me. But another aspect has been feeding into just the power of what you two are doing here, and it's a wonderful thing. And I can't thank you enough for your level of service, your commitment, and thank you for having me on.
Dom, it's amazing to have you here. We've done over 240 of these interviews.
Wow.
With people like you, as powerful, gone through all kinds of challenges. We try and hit it from different angles, different levels too, where people are at in their lives. Like, we can find the giant in everyone. That's our vision, is we know it's in there. And I could bring anybody on this show and interview them and show you that it's there. It's there. And so you've just added to like this collection of powerful messages that really are intended for the viewer to just know, look, this is in you just as much as it's in Dom or Nick or Ryan. That's in you too. And we want you to see that. We want you to wake up to it. And if we can, we want to teach you tools so you don't have to go through what Dom went through or what Nick went through or Ryan, right? So, man, just thank you so much for showing up. For those that are watching, Ryan, before I do that, you have some final thoughts here? Anything else you want to share?
I remember Dom getting super vulnerable in a post on the Ultimate Coach Facebook group, and that's where I was like, man, this dude, this dude, he's that's how I want to be, is like this guy, where you can share so openly and honestly and vulnerable that it's empowering. It shines a light in all the shadows and all the dark places, and he comes through and shines that light on his own life and his own struggles, and so that also people can relate. And like I said, people's lives are changed and better because he is in the world. So thanks, Tom, for just being you.
Thank you, Ryan. You're gonna make me cry on live TV.
I get emotional all the time because of this stuff, because it really does. It hits. It hits in a soul level, in a brother level, in a very raw way. So thanks.
Welcome. Thank you.
Beautiful. For those that are watching, thanks again for being here. I know many of you tune in every Sunday to kind of hear these messages, and thank you for being here. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sharing this message with those that you love. This one especially, like, grab the link to this after we go. This is already live on our YouTube channel, but go grab the link and share it with somebody that you know is struggling right now deeply, and give them this video. I think it's going to impact their life and show them hope and possibility for them. And go tune into the other shows. So if you haven't been through and just turned them on, I promise you're going to binge watch. It'll be better than Yellowstone. maybe not quite there, but or Game of Thrones, right?
A little less drama.
And less nudity.
That gives me some ideas.
Go make it a giant day, and we will see you in the next video.
Love you too.